Have you ever felt stuck in a rut, unable to come up with fresh ideas or solve problems effectively? Well, get ready to break free from those mental barriers. Hello, listeners. It's August 27th, 2025, and welcome to Social Skills Coaching, where you become more likable, more charismatic, and more productive. Today's featured book is Learn to Think Using Riddles, Brain Teasers, and Wordplay. Develop a quick wit, think more creatively and cleverly, and train your problem-solving instincts. Today's episode, we're pulling from Chapter 2 of this book, Situational Riddles. These are going to include the man in the bar, death in a field, an unusual birth, Adam and Eve, a woman shoots her husband. So if you know any of those riddles, please don't spoil it for the rest of us. Prepare to challenge your assumptions, flex your creative muscles, and unlock a whole new level of problem-solving power. And don't forget, if you want a quick summary of today's episode, check the show notes for the timestamp to today's primary takeaways. Thanks for joining us today. We'll start with a group of 5 riddles that have something in common. They are situational in nature. The puzzle lies in setting up a particular situation and asking what came before or what will come next. The situation is usually a little bizarre or inexplicable, with your task being to account for or explain the situation. These riddles are like a little glitch in our ordinary understanding of the world. To solve them, the listener typically has to question or unpick their own biases or conventions. As you read, try to look well beyond the obvious details and content of the riddle and into its underlying structure. Look at yourself thinking and ask what you're doing to best solve the riddle. Once you've solved it, ask again why you were stumped in the first place and what exactly allowed you to make the insight you did. Easier said than done. The man in the bar. A man walks into a bar and asks the bartender for a glass of water. The bartender then begins to search for something underneath the bar. Suddenly, he brings out a firearm and points it straight at the man. The man simply says, "Thank you," and immediately leaves. The question for the reader is, what happened? Let's attempt to completely clear our minds and look as closely as possible at this situation. By engaging in divergent, opening up thinking, we can start to expand our ideas not only of what potentially happens in bars, but about glasses of water and guns. We can then use induction and inference to tentatively make guesses about information we don't yet have. There is clearly more to this story that we don't yet see, but what could it be? Let's ask some questions to guide our thinking, many of which can be seen as clues. Why did the man ask for a glass of water at a bar and not, say, some kind of alcohol? Why did the man not give him what he wanted and instead threatened him with a gun? Finally, why did the man say thank you instead of protesting being threatened? These questions lead us down the right path. The gun must have, in some way, been something the man wanted. So, what is the connection between a glass of water and a gun? Use creative thinking to imagine the state of mind that would have you ask for a glass of water. And also, what set of conditions would have you saying thank you to having a gun pointed in your face? How would you feel if someone pointed a gun at you? And why would you thank someone for making you feel this way? What at first seems like a strange situation is actually rich with clues. In asking the above questions, you slowly start to question your assumptions about certain situations. We all have fixed ideas of what guns and glasses of water mean, but what else can they mean? If you're ready to find out the answer, it follows. The man walking into the bar had hiccups, so he asked for a glass of water. Instead of giving him one, the bartender decided to scare away his hiccups with a gun instead. This worked, and the man leaves the bar, no longer needing his glass of water and thanking the bartender for his help. If you guessed the answer correctly, can you go back and see which questions helped you find it? Perhaps the insight came with imagining other creative and unconventional uses for water, not for thirst, but to cure hiccups, and guns, not to threaten people, but help them, or even fear, a good thing if it cures hiccups. If you didn't get the riddle, ask what exactly stopped you from seeing the trick. Were you misdirected, or did you get stuck on only one possible explanation? For example, that having a gun drawn on you is always a bad thing. How could you avoid this trap in the future? You might decide to make a conscious effort to not assume what certain words, tools, ideas, or phrases mean, that in fact much of their meaning derives from their context, and in solving problems of this nature, we have to carefully consider why a thing happens. What starts out looking like a silly gotcha riddle actually contains plenty of depth. It is only our fixed conceptual assumptions that limit us from seeing the potential in strange and unexpected situations. Remember that next time you're staring at a problem that seems completely incomprehensible. Death in a field. Feeling a little more warmed up? Let's try another situational riddle. As you read it, try to remember what you learned from the last riddle and approach this one with as open a mind as you can manage. A man is lying in an open field, dead. Next to him lies an unopened package. There isn't another animal or person around him. The question is, how did the man die? Again, we're faced with a strange situation, in this case, the end result of a process we can't quite comprehend. Remembering what we learned from the previous example, we can perhaps start by assuming that things are not quite as they seem. Again, let's try to ask a more beautiful question and see where our analytical thinking takes us. There isn't much information in the riddle, but we can start with the facts we are given. The riddle tells us no animal or other person is around, only an unopened package. It would seem that the package is connected to the man's death, and not some other agent like a human or animal killer. What do we know about packages and winding up dead? Can we think of ways of dying that can happen in an open field? Maybe you think of a heart attack, stroke, or simply death from old age. How many different kinds of packages can we think of using divergent creative thinking? What kinds of packages can result in a man's death, or at least accompany it? You might think of a packet of poison, but then this one was unopened. The question then is, what kind of package kills by not being open? You may lead yourself down the path of imagining the man was already sick and desperately needed to open a package that contained the cure, but was too late. But then, what kind of condition could he have that happens without any other people or animals present? Could the package contain insulin? What information are we really missing here? More importantly, can we use what we understand about riddles in general to help us find the answer? So many riddles create a diversion, throw out a red herring, or deliberately obfuscate things. In what ways could this riddle be doing the same? In what ways are things being made to look more bizarre and unusual than they really are? You might find yourself in the mindset of a detective who has to conduct very similar analyses of crime scenes, trying to piece together past events, going only on clues left in the present. If you'd like a clue, know that the man knew he was going to die just before he did. If you're ready for the answer, it follows. The man jumped from an airplane, but hit the earth when his parachute didn't open. It's his parachute that is the unopened package next to him. What can we learn from this little puzzle? As with the previous example, things are not what they seem. We solve this riddle by expanding our understanding of what a package could be and thinking outside the box. In this case, there weren't any animals or people around the man, but there was something in the sky. We might have heard open field and simply assumed this meant the man is completely alone with nothing around him, causing us to completely overlook the extra dimension of the sky above. This is a tricky puzzle that's possible to solve on your own, so long as you're able to connect the unopened package with a death and avoid the diversion of thinking the man died of an illness. How many different kinds of packages did you imagine? And can you see now that your imagination could have taken you even further? An unusual birth. By now, you must be getting familiar with the situational riddle format. That's good. You're developing new cognitive tools and becoming conscious of a great problem-solving truth, that the solution always lies well outside the conceptual bounds of the problem you find yourself in. Isn't it a marvelous muscle to strengthen, the ability to think of what you're not thinking of? Here's the next riddle. A woman gives birth to 2 sons. They're both born in the same hour, in the same day, in the same year. However, they are not twins. The question is, how could this be? This can be a very frustrating puzzle to work through. On the face of it, it is simply impossible that a woman can give birth to 2 sons at the same time without them being twins, right? We know by now to abandon any fanciful ideas of how this might work biologically. More likely, the solution lies in the way we are conceptualizing childbirth, twins, etc., and the way we're using language. Let's look at our assumptions that make us arrive at the conclusion that this situation is not possible. The riddle tells us it is possible, so we need to dismantle these assumptions if we're going to find out exactly how. Assumption. Humans take 9 months to gestate, and a woman cannot give birth to another completely separate baby in the same hour after she's already given birth to one. Assumption. The only way to have 2 babies at a time is to have them in twin form. Focus on the truth of this second assumption, and you will find the solution, an annoyingly simple solution. Is it really true that the only way to have 2 babies at one time is through twins? We need to return to the facts. The woman gave birth to the 2 boys at the same hour, same day, same year. Respecting the ordinary limits of human reproduction, we're forced to imagine that nothing mystical has happened and it's an ordinary birth. But then, our second assumption must be false somehow. Here, we're using our analytical thinking and examining the logic in a deductive argument. A hint comes in thinking along these lines. What are some ways of children being born that aren't twins and yet result in 2 babies being born? This is a way of formalizing the problem. If you're ready for the answer, it's this. The 2 boys are not twins, but triplets. Annoying, isn't it? If you fail to get this one, it should be easy to see why. You completely forget that more than one child can be born at one go, and when they are, they're called twins, triplets, etc. Like the sky in the previous riddle, we completely forget other potential dimensions to the situation. We back ourselves into a corner and assume that there are only 2 options, twins or single births. Falling into this either-or trap is a classic riddle trick. In real life, many problems are solved when we drop this kind of thinking and instead indulge in this and that thinking. By properly identifying the full field of possibilities, we see where our solution lies and don't get distracted chewing over an artificially narrowed set of facts. Adam and Eve. Let's take a look at our 4th situational riddle. A man dies and goes to heaven one day. There, he discovers thousands of people, and all of them are naked. He scans around to try to find someone he might know. He then sees a couple and instantly recognizes them. They're Adam and Eve. The question is, how does the man know that they are Adam and Eve? This riddle is a little different from the others somehow. It seems very simple on the surface, and at first, the question doesn't seem all that challenging. But then you realize that it would be difficult to recognize the literal Adam and Eve in the flesh, having never met them in person. Assuming for a second here that you believe the Adam and Eve story is something that literally happened. It would seem that the man immediately notices something about the man and woman that helps him confirm their identity. What could this distinguishing mark be? What do Adam and Eve possess that other humans don't? A big clue is in the fact that the riddle goes out of its way to explain that everyone is naked. This alerts us to the probability that the distinguishing feature is something that is seen when a person is naked and might otherwise be hidden by clothing. It also tells us that the distinguishing feature is not clothing itself or something like a fig leaf. So, what do we know about Adam and Eve? Specifically, what do we know about the ways they might be different from others? After we've analyzed this line of thinking, can we imagine the ways that they're different that might be immediately visible if they were naked? You might be seeing the answer by now. Adam and Eve are ordinary humans who don't in fact have differing features from average people, except for one thing. The key thing about Adam and Eve is that they're the first people. The answer to the riddle is obvious. The man recognizes Adam and Eve because they're the only people who do not have belly buttons. Belly buttons, or navels, are a sign that you were once attached to your mother as you grew in her womb. Adam and Eve, being created directly by God, won't have them. Granted, this riddle makes plenty of assumptions itself, and to solve it, you need to immerse yourself in the special mix of language, symbolism, and imagery that it exists within. This riddle requires a deeper knowledge of the story, but also a curiously practical, physiological take on it. So even those familiar with the story will have to practice a little lateral thinking. After all, every artistic depiction of Adam and Eve actually does show them with navels. A woman shoots her husband. Let's consider one more situational riddle to practice. By now, you may be getting a good idea of the format of these riddles, as well as the cognitive blind spots and assumptions that stump you if you haven't managed to solve some of them. Here's the riddle. A woman shoots her husband, then holds him underwater for 5 full minutes. A little later on in the day, they both go out for dinner and have a nice time together. The question is, how can this be? What happened? In the first riddle, with the man who asked the barman for a glass of water, the trick lies in the fact that ordinary objects and actions are used in unexpected ways. But we can't imagine these ways. The situation looks strange to us. The moment we open our mind to other possibilities, however, the solution becomes obvious. A similar thing is happening in this riddle. Let's consider the premise that we're faced with and dig a little deeper. Assumption: shooting her husband and holding him underwater should kill him. We already know it doesn't. This immediately tells us to re-examine our understanding of this shooting and this holding underwater. What else could they mean if not that she took a gun and literally murdered him, then held him underwater? We can imagine all sorts of non-lethal ways to shoot someone and then hold them underwater. The gun may have been a water pistol, and the husband may have been wearing a snorkel, and the woman then merely hugs, i.e., holds him underwater at the same time. In a sense, this is the right answer because it does adequately explain the situation. But then again, we could also propose other outlandish solutions, like her husband is actually an amphibious and bulletproof superhero, and they always have fun on weekends by pretending to murder one another. These solutions are good because they show that a degree of creative thinking is taking place, but they're also unsatisfying in a way, perhaps because we feel that they haven't really solved anything and that insightful aha moment, that jump from conundrum to solution, never really happens. The lateral thinking in this puzzle may be very obvious to some and frustrating to others. If you'd like a clue, it comes down to words being used in unexpected ways. The solution is this. The woman is a photographer, and when she shoots her husband, it's with a camera. When she holds him underwater for 5 minutes, it's really his photo that she's holding under developing solution in a dark room. The solution emerges easily if we avoid leaping to assumptions, i.e., she shot him with a gun, and considered all possible meanings of the word shoot and the phrase hold someone underwater. The creative skill comes in seeing that the shooting and holding underwater belong to a completely different conceptual framework. The trick is not to assume that your knee-jerk assumption that she killed with a gun is true. Reading the riddle again, you see no mention of a gun. In real life, don't we all regularly assume what people mean when they use certain words or phrases? Couldn't we solve so many problems or have so many insights if we were simply to become aware that our language was arbitrary, ambiguous, or even that we were using language in the first place? Takeaways. Situational riddles are those that involves some bizarre circumstances that have taken place. Your job is to account for or explain why the situation materialized in that particular way by challenging assumptions one commonly holds. The lowest hanging fruit in terms of solutions or reasoning almost never applies, so it's up to you to deduce what's really going on. Imagine a man who walks into a bar and asks the bartender for a glass of water. The bartender instead brings out a firearm and points it at the man, who then promptly thanks him and leaves immediately. What happened here? Think about why the man asked for water, why he was offered a gunshot instead, and why he would thank the bartender for it. What use could water and a gun have in common? The answer is to get rid of hiccups. The fear of a gunshot chased the man's hiccups away, just like a glass of water would. A man in an open field lies dead with an unopened package next to him. No animal or human is around him. How did he die? Think of the sorts of packages that can cause death without being opened. Using divergent thinking, we can deduce that one type of package is a parachute. The man had jumped out a plane and died because his parachute did not open. A woman gives birth to 2 sons born in the same hour of the same day, but they aren't twins. How? The key here is to think of how one can have 2 babies without being twins. There is a slight omission of information here. The simple answer is that they are triplets. Finally, a woman shoots her husband, then holds him underwater for 5 minutes. Later, they go out for dinner and have a nice time. What happened? Come up with non-lethal ways one can shoot someone and hold them underwater. Again, we have wordplay here. You'll eventually arrive at photography. The woman is a photographer shooting her husband with a camera. Holding him underwater is really his photo in developing solution. All right, listeners, that ends our episode for today. Hopefully you knew some of those riddles. Even more hopefully, you figured some of them out on your own. Here's the takeaways from today's episode in case you missed anything of import. Situational riddles are those that involve some bizarre circumstances that have taken place. Your job is to account for or explain why the situation materialized in that particular way by challenging assumptions one commonly holds. The lowest hanging fruit, in terms of solutions or reasoning, almost never applies, so it's up to you to deduce what's really going on. Imagine a man who walks into a bar and asks the bartender for a glass of water. The bartender instead brings out a firearm and points it at the man, who then promptly thanks him and leaves immediately. What happened there? Think about why the man asked for water, why he was offered a gunshot instead, and why he would thank the bartender for it. What use could water and a gun have in common? The answer? To get rid of the hiccups. The fear of a gunshot chased the man's hiccups away, just like a glass of water would. A man in an open field lies dead, with an unopened package next to him. No animal or human is around. How did he die? Think of the sorts of packages that can cause death without being opened. Using divergent thinking, we can deduce that one type of package is a parachute. The man had jumped out of a plane and died because his parachute didn't open. A woman gives birth to 2 sons born in the same hour of the same day, but they aren't twins. How? The key here is to think of how one can have two babies without being twins. There is a slight omission of information here. The simple answer is that they're triplets. And finally, a woman shoots her husband, then holds him underwater for 5 minutes. Later, they go out for dinner and have a nice time. What happened? Come up with a non-lethal way one can shoot someone and hold them underwater. Again, we have wordplay here. You'll eventually arrive at photography. The woman is a photographer. Shooting her husband with a camera, holding him underwater is really his photo in developing solution. I didn't write them, folks. I'm just reading them back to you. Hope you enjoyed those.